Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, with some very exciting news. But first, a word from our sponsor. No, seriously, I need to do a little chat on German names and what happens when you're dealing with two languages like English, which is a bastard first cousin to German, and, of course, the original, which is a venerable, very venerable old language that goes back through the millennia and has remained, relatively speaking, grammatically and syntactically pure compared to good old English anyway. German names can be problematic in English. Why? Because you have these cognate words that are the same. They sound exactly the same. They're spelled exactly the same, but they may mean something rather different. For example, take the word gift. In English, the word gift is a present. In Spanish, un regalo. Beautiful, nice term. A gift, a present. Well, in German, gift is poison, as all of you in German doubtless know. And so it's a real problem. It's a real problem if you say thank you for the gift when someone in German hands you something. It's going to sound very strange to a German speaker. It's going to sound perfectly normal to an English speaker, and vice versa. So the issue often arises when it comes to names. And the one that I'm thinking of particularly is the conductor Christoph Perek, who is only Maestro Perek in English-speaking countries, because in Germany he is Christoph Prick. And there is no way that Maestro Prick was going to have a career in an English-speaking country unless he did something, for reasons which I hope is obvious. For those of you who are not native English speakers, let me just say that prick is a slang term for the male genitalia, or somebody who behaves like a total jerk, like a dick, for example. These are things that we English speakers just know, and Mr. Perek's agent, or maybe he himself, were quite aware of the fact that there was no way he was coming to conduct out of Germany as Mr. Prick. So that's one example. I say this by way of introducing the new conductor of the Heidelberger Symphoniker, who is tasked with completing the Haydn cycle, Symphony cycle on Hänssler, begun by Thomas Fye. Now, Thomas Fye, as we know, unfortunately had a terrible head injury, an accident in his home, and as a result was unable to continue his cycle of Haydn symphonies. His accident was a very sad thing. Musically, let's be honest, the cycle was getting worse. It was going downhill a little bit under his stewardship. Perhaps there was something going on there that we don't know about. So it's probably a good thing that somebody else is taking over at this point to conclude the cycle. The exciting thing is that the cycle looks like it now will be concluded. And it will be mostly splendid, because most of Thomas Fye's work was excellent. Absolutely excellent. But the name business comes up as we entertain and welcome the new maestro of the Heidelberger Symphoniker. And here he is, Johannes Klumpp. Okay, now, Johannes Klumpp, as we know, was selected after a long and extremely arduous process of auditions and resume checking and references and whatnot. There were three basic candidates who they were looking at. One was Johannes Klumpp, one was Friedrich Dripp, and the other was the very famous Reinhold Burp. You get where I'm coming from, right? Anyway, Klumpp got the job. So this is the first in the remainder cycle run by Klumpp. And you get symphonies numbers 18, 2, 20, 17, and 19. They are, on the whole, performances very much in the mold that Thomas Fye established. That is, period-influenced performances. But I have a couple observations to make. First, this completion of the cycle purports to be in chronological order. Nobody knows what the chronological order is. It's a silly, silly notion. But Haydn scholars have been agonizing over the order. And so this is in chronological order, allegedly, and it makes no difference at all. That's one thing. The other thing is that the harpsichord continuo that was creeping into Fai's earlier recordings of these symphonies seems to have disappeared, at least on this particular disc, which is entirely to the good. I'm very, very happy about that. And I think the result is, speaks for itself. Now, the orchestra, as used in these early symphonies, is quite small. It's close to what Haydn actually had. We have 4 first violins, 4 seconds, 2 violas, 2 cellos, 1 bass, and then all the winds, trumpets and timpani, as Haydn would have had it. I think a few more strings would have just sounded better. I don't think there's any point in doing things that were, typical of the period in question, or which we can document were actually taking place at the period in question, if they don't sound as good as what we can do now. I mean, what's the point, really? But they play very, very well. The performances are lean and exciting, and I want to give you a sample of the kind of sound. Naturally, they would have sounded better if there had been a little bit more vibrato in the strings, especially on sustained notes in slow tempi, but the actual tone is rather pleasing, and I don't think it's going to bother anyone too much. It didn't bother me terribly. So let's listen to a bit. Let's listen to the opening of Haydn's 18th Symphony, which we've covered. All of these, all the symphonies in here have been covered in the Haydn Symphony Crusade so far. So you can listen to that as well in connection with this particular disc. Number 18 is one of Haydn's most experimental symphonies. It begins with a slow movement, followed by a presto, and concluding with a minuet. So here is the opening andante from number 18. Charming. The tempos are good. The playing is just excellent, absolutely excellent. And just to show you what happens in quicker music, which is extremely exciting and well done, sometimes perhaps a bit breathless in typical period instrument fashion, but wow, you can't say that the playing isn't terrific. Here's the opening of Symphony number 17 in F major. And I want to thank Hänssler for giving me permission to use sound clips of their new recordings. It's such a smart thing to do. I mean, what's not to like about this record? And you play a few samples and sure, snap it up. I could never do that. My fingers are just too stumpy to do that. All right, never mind. And then let's listen to a real slow movement, the andante ma non troppo, the not too slow movement of, the not too Andante. Well, Andante is moderate tempo, so it's slower than Andante, the mon en troppo. That's what it means. So let me get that clear. Not quite adagio, but, somewhere in the middle. And as if anybody has any basis of comparison for those things, this is a minor key, sad, slow movement. And I do think that Maestro Klumpp and his forces, see, even when I say that, Maestro Klumpp and his forces, if you're English, it's going to sound funny. There's no way around it. But anyway, I think that they do the music justice. It's very, very fine playing. Have a listen. Quite lovely and very touching and moving. So these are very, very good performances of their type. And I would like to conclude with just one simple observation, because Maestro Klumpp has written the notes, the booklet notes, which seems to be a thing, particularly amongst period instrument people, because they have to be able to describe their approach, which is just, why? I don't know why. Who cares? But one of the things Maestro Klumpp says is, together we aim to focus our eyes on Joseph Haydn and raise the approach to his symphonies to the musicological state of the art. Let me give you some advice, Maestro Klumpp. Nobody gives a damn about the musicological state of the art. The musicological state of the art is a worthless, silly, pointless irrelevance. And I mean that with all sincerity. It's a distraction. I mean, let's take another example, right? Have any of you seen those old dental tools? The ones they used to use like in the 19th century, those heavy-duty cast iron grippers. They would grab your tooth and pull it out and rip. Terrifying just to look at them. You could restore one of those to its absolute state-of-the-art. It could be a state-of-the-art restoration job. You could use the latest scientific techniques to make it as perfect and beautiful as the day it came out of the blacksmith's forge. But nobody in their right mind who is sane would want to have their tooth extracted with one of these state-of-the-art restorations. So, rather than attempting to be musicologically state-of-the-art, Maestro Klumpp, please, just be musically state-of-the-art. That's all you need to be. Because if we are going to listen to this music today, it's not because you have restored it to some theoretical pristine condition. It's because it's going to speak to us expressively. And yes, the musicological aspect may play a part in that, but it's a small one. It's a small part. It's not the most important part, as I'm sure you would agree. So when I hear future releases in this series, I don't care if you're musicologically state-of-the-art. I want to be thrilled musically. And there is competition out there in this music. Other people have done it. Other people have done it surpassingly well. You cannot just dismiss them and say, well, I'm musicologically state-of-the-art. They weren't. Therefore, I'm superior. Doesn't work that way, my friends. Doesn't work that way, Maestro Klumpp. Keep it in mind. Don't go the way your predecessor went and let the technique of performance become an end in and of itself. It's the music that counts. Haydn's music. I look forward to completion of this series because if it gets completed and if it maintains this standard or improves on it, which would be really something, it will probably be overall the best Haydn series out there. but I want to be able to recommend it with a full heart, knowing that the musicality is what triumphed, not the musicology. So keep on listening, folks. Thank you for joining me. Take care.